ramen cups, an empty energy drink can, and a smoldering cigarette. Leo surveyed the holy trinity of crunch time from where his feet were propped up on his desk. 3 instant ramens, 4 cups of burnt office coffee, and half a pack of cigarettes were gone. The project deadline was a ravenous beast, and the spaghetti mess of legacy code on his screen promised a long night of being devoured. Behind him, Patrick had been spinning in his office chair for what felt like an eternity. Leo counted 50-some rotations during the life of his cigarette before the squeaking finally stopped. He glanced over his shoulder, suggesting that another half hour of that and Patrick would be qualified for flight school. Patrick groaned that this was impossible. He kicked off his desk, his chair rolling silently across the floor until he was beside Leo. He explained that only the fossilized tech department geezers could have written this garbage. He thought it would be easier to just start from scratch than to try and patch it. After snatching a cigarette from Leo's pack, he slid back to his own station. Leo offered a quiet laugh but said nothing, pulling his keyboard closer and continuing to type. Patrick observed that Leo always adopted that same wide-legged, laid-back posture during overtime. Leo's long legs were stretched out so far they nearly kicked the monitor on the opposite desk. He asked if there was some kind of thrill to it. Leo told him to shut it, his fingers a blur across the keys. He explained that it was the only way he could feel like he was personally birthing every single line of code from his own body. At 3 in the morning, a low growl emanated from Patrick's stomach. He slid over to Leo's desk again, his eyes pleading for ramen. Leo gestured with his chin toward the 3 empty cups on his desk, telling him to take his pick. Patrick cursed under his breath and stood up to stretch his back, announcing he was going to raid the boss's office for snacks. Leo asked him to grab one for him too. He had found that during these marathon work sessions, it wasn't the exhaustion that was the worst part. It was the gnawing, persistent hunger that made a man feel half dead. Just as Patrick reached the glass door of their manager's office, Leo's phone shattered the silence of the tech department. The opening riff of Welcome to the Jungle echoed off the cubicle walls. Patrick, startled, walked straight into the door with a dull thud. Leo leaned back, reflexively singing along for a moment before fishing the phone from his back pocket. He was surprised to see his mother's name on the screen at this hour. He answered immediately, a knot of concern tightening in his stomach. His mother's voice was as loud and piercing as ever, which he took as a good sign. She asked if he was at home or at the office. He confirmed he was working late. She then issued a rapid-fire command for him to get to the police precinct right away and to bring money. His brother, she said, was in some kind of trouble and needed to be bailed out. Leo switched the phone to his other ear, completely bewildered. He had to ask what brother she was talking about. She clarified it was his cousin, his aunt's boy, Shane. He was attending the state university nearby, and not even a full semester in, he had managed to land himself in a holding cell. She sighed dramatically, urging him to hurry. By the time she hung up, Leo had managed to dredge up a faded memory of this cousin from the dusty corners of his mind. The name was Shane, that was right, but the first thing that came to his mind was the name he'd given him as a kid. Goober. Goober wasn't his real name, or even a nickname anyone else used. It was Leo's private designation for his cousin, and even now, he felt it had been a perfect fit. He grabbed Patrick's wallet on his way out and ran for the elevator. Beyond the name, he tried to summon more memories from the summers and winters spent at his grandmother's house. The Snot King. His aunt and uncle had always lived with his grandparents in a small rural town. Before high school, Leo's family would visit every holiday. That's when he would see his cousin. Regardless of the season, the kid always had a runny nose and was dressed in shabby hand-me-downs, the sleeves of his shirt stiff and shiny with dried mucus. The sight of those sleeves made Leo recoil every time his cousin offered him an apple. He would always sneak into the kitchen to wash it again before taking a bite, convinced he was consuming an unhealthy amount of Goober's snot every holiday. As he pulled out of the parking garage, Leo was still in a daze. He hadn't even known that Goober, the Snot King, was attending college in the same city. His own high school years had been a brutal marathon of advanced placement classes and tutoring sessions that consumed every break. After his junior year, he rarely went back to his grandparents' town, and his memories of Goober had faded significantly. He did remember seeing him at his grandmother's funeral during his junior year of college. Goober had looked the same then, not much bigger. For a kid in 9th grade, he was still scrawny and dark-skinned. He'd been incredibly close to their grandmother, and he had cried so hard he could barely breathe. To Leo, it seemed that even the perpetually runny nose hadn't changed. And now that person was in college. And in jail. Of course, he mused, the two weren't necessarily related. As he pulled up to the precinct his mother had mentioned, his phone rang again. She demanded to know if Shane was hurt, if he had hurt anyone, and how serious it was. Leo told her he hadn't even seen him yet and promised to call back once everything was sorted out. He told her not to worry and hung up before walking inside. The moment he stepped through the door, he froze. A young cop sat at a desk, pinching his nose with a look of profound suffering, a notepad in front of him. On the floor, about a dozen young men were slumped in 2 separate groups. The stench of stale beer and sweat was so overpowering Leo nearly threw up the 3 bowls of ramen he'd eaten earlier. It was worse than the time a rat died in the walls of his dorm room. Just as Leo was about to offer a word of sympathy to the beleaguered officer, one of the guys on the floor heard his footsteps and looked up. His eyes locked onto Leo, and he suddenly shot to his feet, bounding over. Leo! The face was so close that Leo's eyes nearly crossed, just trying to focus on the wall of white teeth grinning at him. He put a hand on the kid's chest to stop his forward momentum and took a step back to get a clearer look. He was a good-looking kid. Brenda, the 36-year-old self-proclaimed heartthrob of their tech department, would have called him a sweetheart and lamented that she hadn't been born 20 years later. Gu Shane? Leo stared at the young man, who was a good half-head taller than him and still grinning, a blood-soaked piece of paper towel stuck to his forehead. He couldn't reconcile this person with the scrawny, sniffling Goober from his memories. Shane nodded enthusiastically, telling Leo that he hadn't changed a bit. That was ridiculous. After all these years, not changing would make him some kind of freak. Even Goober had grown into a person. Leo forced a tight smile and asked what had happened. The paper towel on Shane's head was clearly losing its battle against the bleeding, but he didn't seem to care. He wiped a smear of blood from his forehead onto his shirt and explained it was no big deal. No big deal? The cop at the desk interjected, still pinching his nose. He wondered aloud if someone needed to get killed before it qualified as a big deal. He looked at Leo and asked whose family he was. For a second, Leo felt like he was outside a delivery room, with a doctor poking his head out to ask who the father was. Shane spoke up, proudly announcing that Leo was his brother. The cop glared at him, ordering him to sit down and shut up. Shane immediately spun around and rejoined the slump of bodies on the floor. In Leo's opinion, it really wasn't a huge deal. It was a common story of 2 groups of college kids drinking too much at a diner and getting into a pointless brawl. The consequences weren't severe. Although there was blood, it was all superficial cuts and scrapes. No one's modeling career was in jeopardy. The main issue was that in their search for makeshift weapons, Shane's group had dismantled the diner's awning, along with several tables and chairs. There were damages to be paid. Leo had, at least on the surface, always been a model student. This was his first time in a police station and his first time being lectured by a cop who was pinching his nose. All he wanted to do was pay the fine and leave. But when the time came to pay, he froze. There wasn't enough cash. That damn Patrick had just been paid, but his wallet was almost empty, thick only with a wad of expense receipts. With a sigh, Leo pulled out his own CR card and asked if they took plastic. By the time Leo had driven around for half an hour to find an ATM, withdrawn the cash, and bailed out the entire crew, it was after 4 in the morning. Shane was apologetic, scratching his head and wincing as he accidentally poked his wound. He promised that he and his friends would pay Leo back as soon as possible. His friends all chimed in with their thanks. All Leo could think about was the unfinished work waiting for him and the scowl he would face from his boss in the morning. He just waved them off, telling them to get back to campus and clean themselves up. Just as they were about to part ways, Leo remembered his mom's order, telling Shane he had to come with him first. He explained that his mom needed to see him alive and in one piece to be reassured. Leo knew exactly what to expect when he walked through his parents' door with Shane, who still had streaks of dried blood on his face. He sidestepped just in time, before his mother let out a shriek and lunged forward. She wrapped Shane in a fierce hug, then held his face in her hands, examining him as if with a magnifying glass, asking what had happened and why there was so much blood. His father, more practical, retrieved the first aid kit. He told Shane to wash his face while he got things ready. Leo stood to the side, pouring himself a glass of water, watching his parents fuss over Shane. His grandparents had always lived in their rural town. Besides his uncle, all of their children had settled in the city. The old couple had refused to move, so his mother and her siblings could only help by sending money. His uncle's family had been the ones to care for them all those years. His mother was deeply grateful, and that gratitude extended to their son. Leo, however, was rarely home and had no idea Shane was even attending college here. He certainly didn't know how Shane had managed to earn favorite son status in his own home. Leo felt his parents were overreacting. A small cut on a young man's head was hardly a major injury. But he understood. He had always been the good kid, a role he played so well that he rarely got hurt, which meant his mother's tolerance for injury had never been properly developed. After they had cleaned Shane's wound, washed his face, and had him change into a set of Leo's old clothes, Leo finally got a good look at his cousin. Other than his skin still being a bit dark, a remnant of his childhood, Leo could find no other trace of the goober from his memories. The grimy, monkey-like kid was completely gone. Leo placed a glass of water in front of him, suggesting that if it was bad, they should go to the hospital for a few stitches. Shane just chuckled, insisting it was just a scratch, and downed the glass of water in one go. He'd grown into a person, Leo thought, watching as his mother inspected the wound on Shane's head. Goober had actually managed to transform. He hadn't expected that. Leo realized that not only had he grown into a person, but he had become a rather handsome one. He would likely be considered attractive in any crowd. Only when he smiled did a hint of the goofy kid from the past reappear. It was the same smile Shane used to have when he would offer Leo an apple as a kid, happy, but a little shy. At his mother's urging, Shane recounted the story of the fight. As Leo had guessed, it was just a bunch of drunk kids acting stupid. Nothing serious. He assured his aunt she had nothing to worry about and that he would be more careful in the future. Seeing that the crisis was over, Leo stood up, ready to head back to the office to finish his work. But before he could take a step, his mother asked if the spare room in his rental apartment was still empty. Leo confirmed it was as he put on his shoes. He had originally had a roommate, but the guy had moved back to his hometown, and Leo hadn't bothered to find a new one. His mother then turned to Shane and announced that he would be moving in with his cousin the next day. He was no longer to live in the dorms. Leo and Shane both turned in shock, their surprised questions overlapping in the suddenly silent room. Leo's entire day was soured. Not only had he not slept, but he hadn't finished his work, which earned him a lecture from his boss. His manager lamented that for someone so new to the company, he was already slacking off like an old-timer. He complained that an entire night of overtime had produced almost nothing. Leo promised it would be done before he left for the day. He could feel a headache building. "What?" his boss asked, taken aback. "The work will be finished by the end of the day," Leo clarified, quickly backing out of the office. "There's not much left." As soon as he was out, he saw Patrick peeking over his monitor, grinning at him. Annoyed, Leo walked over and smacked him on the back of the head. He told Patrick it was his fault, that he almost got stuck at the precinct because his wallet was useless. Patrick explained that he'd had to buy his wife a new phone. She'd been eyeing him for a month, just waiting for payday, and had snatched his cash faster than a mugger. He offered to help Leo with his workload. Leo gratefully accepted, glancing back at the boss's office and muttering that if they didn't finish by 5, he'd end it all. Late that afternoon, they finally completed the task. Leo rubbed his eyes, stood up to stretch, and walked to the break room to have a cigarette by the window. His phone buzzed in his pocket. He pulled it out and saw an unfamiliar number. He answered, a cigarette dangling from his lips. A cheerful voice on the other end said, "It's me." Leo told him to cut the crap and give him a name. The voice sounded vaguely familiar. After a brief pause, the voice complied, "Shane." Leo then remembered the other major issue he had to deal with. Yesterday, his mother and his aunt had decided, after a brief consultation, that Shane's recent brush with the law was a dangerous sign. To prevent him from sliding further into the abyss of juvenile delinquency, they had decreed that he would be placed under the care of the outstanding youth representative, Leo. All objections were summarily overruled. He'd been so busy all day that he had completely forgotten. The memory brought a fresh wave of irritation. It wasn't that he was unwilling to live with someone. He had been splitting rent before, and having someone to share the cost was a good thing. The issue was his personality. He wasn't a social person. He had lived with his previous roommate for over 6 months and had probably exchanged fewer than 10 sentences with him, outside of discussions about utilities. Shane was his cousin. Ignoring him wouldn't be right. Plus, the family expected him to look after the kid. The whole situation just screamed trouble. He managed a weak, "Oh, Shane," into the phone. Shane sounded just as reluctant, explaining that his aunt was insisting he move in today. He had tried to put it off until the next semester, but she wouldn't hear of it. No one wanted to be supervised, especially a college freshman who was just tasting freedom for the first time. Leo told him that was just how his mom was, blowing a stream of smoke out the window. Before Shane could respond, a loud moan, clearly from a man and a woman, erupted from the other end of the line. Leo paused, then chuckled, asking if Shane was watching a movie. Shane sounded embarrassed, clarifying that it wasn't him. It was those jerks. He said he would go outside to talk. Leo told him not to bother. He asked if Shane knew where his office was and told him to just bring his things and wait for him after work. With a reluctant agreement, Shane quickly hung up. Leo had just returned to his desk, planning to watch a movie until quitting time, when his boss's head appeared in the doorway. He announced a mandatory tech department meeting in 3 minutes. Leo slammed himself down into his chair in frustration before getting up and trudging toward the conference room with his colleagues. Calling meetings right at the end of the day was one of their boss's worst habits. The agenda was always the same: a postmortem on recent mistakes. The length of the meeting depended on the severity of the error. This one was long. A financial program they had developed for a client had a seizure a few days after launch, causing the client's payroll to be delayed by a week. By the time the boss finally waved his hand and concluded the meeting, it was after 8 o'clock. A crowd of employees jostled for space in the elevator, all desperate to escape before being roped into more work. Leo was pressed up against Patrick when a female colleague sighed that her son was waiting for her to come home and make dinner. Her words struck Leo like a bolt of lightning. He remembered that he had told Shane to wait for him. It was now 2 hours past closing time. He quickly checked his phone but found no missed calls. When he reached the lobby of the office building, he scanned the area and saw someone slumped on a sofa. A baseball cap was pulled down low, hiding most of his face. He was clearly fast asleep, his backpack thrown carelessly on the floor beside him. Leo tapped Patrick on the shoulder and told him to go on ahead. Patrick glanced at the person sleeping on the couch and asked who it was. Leo replied that it was his cousin. He walked over and kicked Shane's leg. Shane shot up from the sofa with a fluid motion that startled Leo, as if he'd been stabbed. Leo asked if he had been asleep or not. Shane replied that a kick like that would wake a pig. He tipped his cap back, grinned at Leo, and slung his backpack over his shoulder. Leo explained about the last-minute meeting as he led Shane to the parking garage, offering a brief apology. He wondered why Shane hadn't called him. Shane just smiled sheepishly, saying that he had fallen asleep shortly after arriving and had slept straight through until Leo's kick. Once in the car, Shane took off his hat. Leo glanced at him, feeling that something was different from the night before, but he couldn't put his finger on it. His mind kept trying to superimpose the image of the childhood goober onto the young man beside him. As if reading his mind, Shane pointed to the bandage on his head and explained that he'd had to shave his hair because the cut was hard to clean. Leo then noticed the buzz cut so short he could see the scalp beneath the stubble. Shane wasn't very talkative, and Leo was even less so with people he didn't know well. Although Shane was his cousin, the years of silence between them made conversation difficult. The drive was mostly quiet. As Leo turned into his apartment complex, Shane rolled down the window and looked at the bus stop sign on the street corner, noting that there was a direct route. Leo mentioned that the public transportation in the area was convenient and that there were probably several buses that went to his school. It was only then that he realized something and asked, embarrassed, which school he went to. Shane turned to him, saying it was State U. He asked if his aunt hadn't told him. The question made Leo feel even more awkward. He admitted that he hadn't been home in over 6 months because of how busy he was at work. Shane just smiled, saying that explained why, every time he visited his aunt, she would talk his ear off all night. Leo remained silent. He finally understood how Shane had achieved favorite son status with his mother. Still, he was surprised that Shane had gotten into State U. He remembered Goober as a kid who did nothing but climb trees and explore the woods behind his grandparents' house. He never saw him do any homework. As he was about to unlock his front door, Leo turned to Shane and warned him that his place was a bit of a mess. Shane just waved a dismissive hand, saying his own room was never tidy. Leo pushed the door open. Despite Shane still froze for a second when he stepped inside. The apartment of the brilliant young man his relatives always praised as a shining star looked like it had just been robbed. The living room table was littered with several empty ramen cups. The sofa was buried under a pile of clothes. Shoes were scattered randomly on the floor, and a set of dumbbells sat in a corner. Shane chose his words carefully, remarking that Leo must be very busy with work. Leo, pushing a pile of clothes off the sofa, admitted that it was like this even when he wasn't busy. He changed his clothes daily but only did laundry once a week to save time. He then asked Shane if he knew how to clean a room. Shane seemed taken aback for a moment but quickly replied that he did, offering to help clean the apartment the next morning when he didn't have classes. Leo almost laughed. The kid was still as dense as he remembered. He clarified that he was asking him to clean up the other room, the one he would be staying in. Shane was in the kitchen rinsing a rag. Leo stood nearby, boiling water for noodles, or more accurately, for instant ramen. His life was irregular. Late nights at the office were common, and when debugging a program or taking on freelance work, it wasn't unusual for him to work for several days straight. Instant ramen was his simplest means of survival. Boil water, pour, and toss the cup. No dishes required. As Leo explained this, Shane was silent for a moment. Then he patted Leo on the shoulder and said it was okay to just admit he didn't know how to cook. It wasn't something to be ashamed of. Leo was speechless. His mother had always been so diligent that he had never learned. He just waved a hand and told Shane to go clean his room so he could get some sleep that night. Shane just chuckled and walked away, rag in hand. A few minutes later, a loud crash, accompanied by the splintering of wood, came from the spare bedroom. It was followed by Shane's indignant shout, "Son of a bitch! Are you demolishing the place?" Leo turned off the stove and ran into the bedroom. Shane was splayed face down on the bed. The bed itself was in a shocking state, with a large crater in the middle and the frame underneath snapped into 3 pieces. Shane carefully climbed off the bed, which groaned in protest with every movement, threatening to completely disintegrate. He explained that he had just wanted to wipe down the mattress. He had barely gotten on when it collapsed. Leo was speechless. His previous roommate had slept on that bed for nearly a year without any issues. He eyed Shane suspiciously and asked him how much he weighed. Shane insisted it had nothing to do with his weight, arguing that the bed shouldn't have collapsed even if he weighed 400 pounds. He claimed it had to do with what kind of abuse the bed had endured before. He speculated that the previous tenant must have been bringing girls back and putting the bed through its paces. Leo was too tired to explain that the previous occupant was a celibate postdoctoral researcher who spent all his time in a lab, loved instant ramen even more than he did, and barely gave women a second glance. The guy was so asexual that Leo had once suspected he might have a problem with his orientation, or perhaps his function. In any case, the bed was broken, and the sofa in the living room was too short even for Leo. Shane was taller. He had no choice but to point to his own bedroom and state that Shane would be sleeping in his room for the night. They would buy a new bed tomorrow. Leo was not happy about the arrangement. His bed was a queen, but the idea of sharing it with another man on a warm night was unappealing. Shane, however, seemed unconcerned. He jumped onto the bed and bounced a few times, declaring it much more comfortable than the other one. Leo opened his closet, grabbed a pillow, and tossed it onto the bed, telling him to take it easy and not to break this one too. Shane hopped off the bed, pulled off his shirt, and flopped back down, asking if Leo brought his girlfriend over often. Leo, looking at Shane's bare torso, replied that it wasn't often. The scrawny, monkey-like physique of his childhood was gone. Shane was now lean and muscular, a physique that surprised Leo. He and Patrick spent 3 days a week sweating at the gym, and Patrick was still just soft around the edges. Shane rolled onto his side, propping his head on his arm. He told Leo to just let him know when he was bringing a girlfriend home, and he would stay on campus. Leo told him not to worry about it as he turned to the kitchen to make their ramen. Shane's comment had struck a nerve. He hadn't heard from Chloe in almost 2 weeks. Their relationship felt more like a formality. They had been dating for nearly a year, but their dynamic was more like comrades in a revolution than lovers. Dates were usually trips to the bookstore. On the rare occasions she came over, she would be engrossed in her engineering textbooks while he played video games on the side. After a while, he had started to think that reading and gaming had become their foreplay. "I can cook when I have time from now on," Shane said, taking a bite of his ramen with a pained expression. He commented that if they ate too much of this stuff when they died, they could just be put on display at home without any need for embalming fluid. Leo told him that was disgusting, especially while they were eating. He took his bowl to the living room, kicked on the TV with his knee, and sat down amidst the pile of clothes on the sofa to watch the local news. He took one bite of his noodles and then lost his appetite. Regarding Shane's offer to cook, Leo felt a pang of something. Even a goofy kid like this claimed he could cook. By comparison, Chloe's only virtue seemed to be her ability to tolerate eating instant ramen with him. After their delicious meal, Leo perched on a chair and started playing a game. This was his greatest pleasure outside of work, sleep, and the gym. It mostly involved him and Patrick hiding in dark corners of a virtual world, ambushing other players. Every time they logged on, their screen would be flooded with curses, which they found hilarious. As they were chased across the map by a vengeful mob, Leo often felt that teaming up with Patrick caused his IQ to plummet to near imbecile levels. Shane was watching TV in the living room, first getting engrossed in some tear-jerking Korean drama, then starting a phone call against the backdrop of its equally weepy soundtrack. Remembering his mother's directive to keep an eye on Shane, Leo, while maneuvering his character to attack a player named Kill Me You Are a Moron, strained to hear the conversation. Unfortunately, Shane kept his voice low, seemingly not to disturb him. All Leo could discern was a tone of extreme irritation. But it wasn't a total loss. The call dragged on for over 2 hours. Just as Leo was forced to log off after being repeatedly killed by his victim's friends, he finally heard a clear sentence from Shane. "For Christ's sake, you made my phone die. Drink some tea and go to sleep. Stop acting like a nagging old woman. So annoying." Leo found this incredibly strange. Based on the tone, The person Shane had been arguing with for 2 hours was a man. Still playing? Not going to sleep? Shane walked into the room, shirtless after his shower, and glanced at Leo's screen. Leo shut down his computer and stood up to stretch. It was almost midnight. He grumbled about the phone call that had been buzzing in his ear all evening. Shane just shrugged, saying it was just some idiot, before flopping onto the bed. Leo was about to retort that if he could talk to an idiot for 2 hours, he wasn't much better, but he held his tongue. He had to maintain his image as a responsible older brother if he was going to manage Shane as his mother and aunt expected. Shane, fluffing a pillow, asked if Leo still slept on the side against the wall. He remembered that when they were kids and shared a bed, Leo always insisted on the inside spot. He recalled that every time Leo got up in the middle of the night to use the bathroom, he would step right on his stomach. Leo, heading to the bathroom to shower, replied that either side was fine. He had no memory of such an incident. He did, however, remember being afraid of the dark as a kid. When his parents worked late, he would build a fortress of blankets around himself so he could feel something solid on all sides. But he couldn't imagine stepping on Shane's stomach every single time. That would require a special kind of talent. When he returned to the room, Shane was already asleep, leaving the spot by the wall open for him. A slight smile played on his lips as if he was having a pleasant dream. "What's so funny?" Leo asked as he carefully got into bed, trying not to disturb him. "Listen." Shane opened his eyes and pointed toward the window with a grin. Puzzled, Leo leaned closer to the window. It was quiet outside. Most of the residents were asleep. After a few seconds, he froze. A woman's moans, carried on the night air, drifted in from a nearby apartment, clear and distinct over the hum of the air conditioner. What the hell? Who's watching porn with the volume cranked up so high? Leo felt a prickling sensation on his scalp. The sound was incredibly stimulating in the dead of night. "It's not porn." Shane continued to grin, glancing at the ceiling. "It's a live performance." Just as he spoke, Leo heard the sound of a chair scraping across the floor from the apartment above, and the woman's moans grew louder. "Go to sleep." "Lights off," Leo said, lying back down. The woman upstairs was in her 20s. He had seen her a couple of times. She seemed quiet and reserved. He was shocked that she could make such a racket. It made him feel hot all over. Shane chuckled, seemingly unconcerned, and turned off the light. After the room went dark, neither of them spoke. But for some reason, in the ensuing silence, the woman's moans became even clearer. It didn't sound like she was going to finish anytime soon. For a normal man who hadn't seen his girlfriend in over half a month, the sound was an unbearable temptation. If it had been from a movie, he could have ignored it. But the occasional thumps against the ceiling served as a constant reminder that this was a live show. The strange, voyeuristic feeling was maddening. Before long, Leo found himself uncomfortably aroused, desperately wishing Chloe were lying next to him. Unfortunately, reality was cruel. The person next to him was a man, who, judging by his steady breathing, seemed completely unaffected. The contrast made Leo feel too embarrassed to even go to the bathroom to take care of himself. After tossing and turning for a while, unable to sleep, Leo sighed and whispered to Shane, "You have incredible self-control." Shane didn't answer right away. After a moment, he sat up with a chuckle. "Not really. What they're doing up there is just not cool." In the dim moonlight filtering through the window, Leo glanced down at Shane and immediately felt a sense of equilibrium. The kid was sporting a tent of his own. He wasn't the only one with his mind in the gutter. When Shane leaned over him and pulled open the curtains, Leo had no idea what he was doing. Then Shane pushed open the window and stuck his head out. Leo sat up quickly, telling him not to shout. But Shane ignored him, yelling out into the night, "Hey, buddy upstairs. The night is long. Give it a rest, will ya? Show some mercy for us single guys down here. Aren't you afraid you're gonna chafe?" Leo was mortified. He reached over and slammed the window shut. "Have you no shame?" It worked, didn't it? Listen, they stopped immediately. Shane sat back on the bed, completely unfazed. Sure enough, the sounds from outside had ceased. The ceiling was quiet. Leo was speechless, worried that the man upstairs might have been shocked into impotence. He told Shane to be more considerate. Shane just laughed and jumped out of bed, retorting that if the guy had a problem, he could come find him, and he would take care of it for him. "Where are you going?" Leo asked. "To take care of business," Shane replied, walking out of the room with his own tent still pitched. Leo couldn't fathom Shane's logic. He didn't remember him being this brazen as a kid. He heard the bathroom door close and noted that Shane was in there for a long time. Long enough to pee a dozen times. He really was taking care of business. Leo was impressed. His own arousal had diminished after the shouting incident, but Shane was apparently still going strong. A few minutes later, Shane sauntered back into the room, shirtless, and flopped onto the bed. "Nice," he declared. Leo didn't know how to respond. "Hey, I'm going shopping tomorrow. Need me to pick anything up?" Shane asked out of the blue. Leo closed his eyes, finally feeling sleepy. He told Shane he didn't need anything and warned him not to spend too much money. Shane rolled over to face him, saying it was fine, he was tutoring. "Tutoring what?" Leo asked, remembering that a colleague's son needed an English tutor. Shane just laughed. "Ice skating." "Ice skating?" Leo was taken aback. "What's your major?" "Physical education." "That has nothing to do with ice skating," Leo said, holding back the thought that it was a useless major. "Are you that good?" Shane explained that it was for one of his professor's kids. The hockey team was asked for a tutor and he had the time, so they gave him the gig. He then nudged Leo, asking if he wanted to learn. He remembered that back at their grandmother's, Leo fell every time he tried to skate. Leo just waved his hand dismissively. He recalled the frozen river by his grandparents' house where all the kids would skate. He had tried a couple of times and fallen miserably, while Goober just laughed and followed him, yelling, "Timber!" Shane chuckled beside him but said nothing more. A moment later, a thought occurred to Leo. "You're on the hockey team?" "State you has a hockey team?" "Yeah, the athletic department does," Shane replied. "You want to learn? I'll teach you." Leo ignored the offer. "You got in on a sports scholarship, didn't you?" "Of course. How else would I have gotten in?" Shane propped his head on his arm and smiled at him. "You've been wondering about that this whole time, haven't you, Leo?" Leo admitted that he had. Shane seemed so unreliable that his being in college at all was a shock. Shane didn't seem offended. He explained that he never wanted to go to college. He didn't have the brains for it and saw it as a waste of time and money. But, he continued, his voice softening, their grandmother had always said that if his brother could go to college, then he could too, and that would make her happy. His voice wavered at the end. He had been raised by their grandmother and was very close to her. Leo patted his shoulder. "Get some sleep." Shane rolled over, his back to Leo, and said nothing more. The next morning, when Leo's alarm went off, he shot out of bed as usual. He had his timing down to the second. But today, something felt different. Before he could figure out what it was, he heard a strained voice from the bed. "Get off." Leo looked down and saw his leg planted firmly on Shane's stomach. He quickly retracted it and got out of bed. "Sorry, force of habit. I forgot you were there. Still say you never stepped on me?" Shane rubbed his stomach with a look of resignation. "You just crushed my morning wood." "Let me see," Leo said, grabbing the waistband of Shane's boxers, pulling it out and letting it snap back. "Looks like you had a little too much fun last night. Do you have any sense of being an older brother?" Shane yelped, covering himself and sitting up. "Do you have any sense of being a younger one?" Leo retorted, satisfied. "You've been acting like a clown since last night. Keep it up, and I'll show you what an older brother really is." He turned and left the room. "By the way, I'm going to the gym with a colleague tonight. You're on your own for dinner. My keys are on the table." Shane yelled something from the bedroom, but Leo was already preoccupied with his day. He had to finish debugging several programs, meet with 2 clients, and then hit the gym. The only good thing about his day at the office was that his boss was absent. Brenda was also in a good mood, handing out donuts to everyone. She called out to Leo as he walked in, telling him she had saved one for him before Patrick could grab it. Leo took the donut and thanked her, telling her to keep it on the down low. Patrick grumbled, his mouth full, wondering why Brenda never called him her baby. Brenda shot back from her desk that calling him that wouldn't make it true. Their boss never showed up, which meant no overtime. Leo dispatched his clients as quickly as possible and dragged Patrick out of the office right at 5 o'clock. Leo's plan was to hit the gym for a hard hour and be done, but Patrick insisted on stopping at the smoothie shop next door first. Leo reluctantly followed him in and froze. Sitting at a table facing the door was Chloe. His blood ran cold. Running into a girlfriend you hadn't spoken to in 2 weeks should have been a happy occasion. But Chloe had a man sitting across from her, holding her hand, and the blissful smile on her face made it clear that she was very happy. "Shit," Patrick muttered, staring in disbelief. "Is that Chloe?" Leo managed a strangled, "Yeah." He felt like he couldn't breathe. He could watch 100 soap operas and still not be prepared for this kind of betrayal. Just as he was about to turn and leave, Chloe looked up with a smile and her eyes met his. The man with her noticed her expression and turned to look as well. A pretentious, artsy-looking middle-aged man. The exact type that romantically naive young women fell for. "Leo, what a coincidence," Chloe said after a few seconds of stunned silence. She then turned to the man and introduced him in a low voice. "My ex-boyfriend." "The fuck?" Patrick muttered, turning away. "Don't flatter yourself," Leo said, fighting the urge to smash the entire smoothie shop to pieces. He nodded at the man. "Ex-booty call is more accurate." Leo couldn't describe the feeling. It was surreal. He didn't even know why he was still composed enough to order a smoothie to go before turning and walking out under Chloe's complicated gaze. Patrick followed him, cursing under his breath. He had met Chloe a few times. He had always thought that while she wasn't stunning, she was decent-looking, and her relationship with Leo had seemed stable, if a bit bland. He never would have expected this from her. He didn't know how to comfort Leo. For a man in this situation, words were useless. "I'm going home," Leo said, taking a sip of his smoothie as they walked toward the gym's parking lot. Patrick said he might as well go home too. He wasn't in the mood for a workout anymore. Leo told him to take a cab. He wasn't in the right state of mind to drive him. He then paused, his back to Patrick, and added, "Don't worry. Chloe's not worth getting into an accident over." Leo sat in his car, smoking a cigarette. Chloe's ex-boyfriend comment had really stung. Half a month of silence, and then suddenly, with no, he was an ex. He finished his smoothie slowly, then pulled out his phone and dialed Shane. Since the gym was off, he figured he would take Shane out to a real dinner. He couldn't have his cousin's first 2 meals with him be instant ramen. He heard the TV in the background when Shane answered. He told him he wasn't going to the gym and to wait for him so they could go out to eat. But Shane told him not to, the sound of a gas stove clicking in the background. He was already cooking, and it would be ready by the time Leo got home. Leo was surprised. The kid had actually been serious about cooking. He started the car, asking if Shane needed him to pick anything up from the supermarket. Shane, sounding a bit flustered, said he had everything and that he had to go before something burned. When Leo stepped out of the elevator, he ran into the quiet, reserved young woman from upstairs. He immediately recalled the soulful moans from the other night. You really couldn't judge a book by its cover. As she stepped into the elevator, he let out an involuntary whistle. It wasn't his intention. He must have been possessed. He heard her mutter creep as the doors closed. He was about to lose his mind. He had dated a few women, but after his first love, Chloe was the only one he had been serious about. The kind he had considered marrying, even if their foreplay was video games and textbooks. And now she had dealt him this blow. He couldn't name the emotion churning inside him, but his hands were still shaking as he fumbled with his key at the door. Took him several tries to get it into the lock. "Open up," he said, kicking the door. He heard footsteps, and Shane opened the door, holding a spatula. "You're back quick. Just one more dish to go." Leo sat at the table, which Shane had cleaned, and watched his back as he worked in the kitchen. He had often imagined this scene, him watching TV in the living room while the comforting aroma of a home-cooked meal filled the air. Now, in his clean and tidy apartment, the figure in the kitchen was a goofy young man, but the warmth was still there. At least he wasn't eating instant ramen. The food smelled delicious, not like the culinary disasters he usually produced. But the warmth was quickly followed by a sharp, unbearable pain. Leo shook his head, forcing himself to stop thinking about it. "Why bother cooking? We could have just eaten out," Leo said, tasting the food on the table. It was surprisingly good. "You don't get it, Leo," Shane said, leaning on the table, looking proudly at his creation. "There are two things in life you should never settle for: love and food." The word love felt like a punch to the gut. To hide his reaction, Leo stood up and turned on the TV. Shane opened the fridge and asked if he wanted a beer. Leo glanced at the can in his hand, then tossed his wallet on the table. "Get the hard stuff. Go buy some." Shane caught the wallet, looking at him with a puzzled expression. Leo turned his face away, praying Shane wouldn't ask why. "Whiskey?" Shane asked, heading for the door. "Something that'll knock me out," Leo replied. After Shane left, Leo slumped onto the table. This was so screwed up. He took out his phone and deleted all of Chloe's old texts and her contact information. But it didn't help. The feeling of humiliation was more than just heartbreak. He kicked a chair under the table, sending it flying across the room. When Shane returned with 2 large bottles of cheap, potent vodka, he saw the overturned chair and just smiled. He placed the bottles in front of Leo, set the chair upright, and sat down across from him. "Practicing your kicks? Only 2 bottles?" Leo asked, eyeing the vodka. "This is for you," Shane said, pouring a generous amount into Leo's glass. "I'll stick to beer. I have practice tomorrow." Leo didn't respond, just picked up his glass and took a long swallow. The cheap vodka burned all the way down. "Didn't know you could actually cook." "There's a lot you don't know about me. You'll find out eventually," Shane said with a smile, taking a large gulp of his beer. Leo drank in silence. The food was good, but he had no appetite. Shane didn't speak either, just ate quietly, occasionally glancing at the TV and laughing. Leo knew he must look like a wreck and worried that Shane would ask him what was wrong. He would rather die than talk about it with a kid 6 years his junior. But Shane never asked. The silence, punctuated only by the sound of the TV, was perfect for drinking his sorrows away. He had finished 1 bottle before he'd had more than a few bites of food. His vision was starting to swim. As he reached for the 2nd bottle, Shane's hand shot out and stopped him. "You're drinking too fast," Shane said, likely guessing Leo's tolerance. He moved the other bottle to the floor beside him. "If you keep this up, you'll have a killer headache tomorrow. You'll regret it." "It's fine. Give it to me," Leo said, pulling his hand away. All he wanted was to get drunk enough to pass out and forget everything. Shane placed some food in his bowl, insisting he eat something first. He didn't move to get the bottle. "Just stop nagging, okay?" Leo slammed his hand on the table, his voice slurring. "You're so damn bossy." Shane just looked at him, then got up, took the bottle into the kitchen. Leo watched him, confused. Before he could figure out what Shane was doing, he heard the sound of shattering glass. Shane had smashed the bottle in the sink. Leo shot up from his chair. "Shane, what the hell? Go ahead. Yell at me," Shane said, leaning against the doorframe with his arms crossed. "You know where to find me." Leo pointed at him, too angry to speak. He fought the urge to grab a chair and smash it over his head, instead slamming his palm down on the table again. "Leo, whatever it is, it's not worth torturing yourself over," Shane said, sitting back down and calmly eating his food. "No matter how much you suffer, no one will know." Leo glared at Shane, searching for something to throw at him. He spotted Shane's hockey stick leaning against the sofa. Perfect. Just as he took a step toward it, his phone rang, blasting its classic rock anthem. Hey! Shane, startled by the ringtone, shouted involuntarily, making Leo feel like he was in the middle of a concert. Idiot, Leo muttered, fumbling for his phone. He squinted at the screen, recognizing the number but unable to place it. He answered, "Who is this?" "It's Chloe." Leo felt his breath catch in his throat. Took him a full minute to force out a cold, "What do you want?" Her voice was thick with tears. She said she felt she owed him an explanation. "Honey, what is there to explain to an ex-boyfriend?" "Let's just leave it at that," Leo said, slumping back into his chair. He searched his pockets for a cigarette, but they were empty. Shane lit one of his own and passed it to him. Chloe started crying on the other end of the line.
I'm sorry, Leo.
"I'm so sorry." "I know," Leo said, frowning. He couldn't stand it when women cried, but Chloe's sobbing just made him angry. "This is ridiculous. After you're done, am I supposed to say it's okay? We were together for almost a year," she continued, sobbing, as if she hadn't heard him. "You were really good to me, but it wasn't the kind of love I wanted. There was no passion. When I'm with him, I feel so happy and free." Leo almost laughed. He cut her off. "You're hilarious. You were the one who dragged me to the library on dates. You were the one who brought your signal processing textbook to my place and studied all night. You wanted passion, but you acted like a damn nun. You misled me for a whole year into thinking you were so chaste we could barely even have sex. What am I supposed to do with that?" "Leo, you're an asshole," Chloe yelled, stunned into silence for a moment before lashing out. "Then why are you wasting your breath on an asshole?" Leo snapped, and before she could respond, he pulled the battery out of his old phone and slammed it on the table. "Passion my ass." The battery bounced once and landed in the bowl of soup. Shane jumped up, fished it out, and started wiping it with a paper towel. Not satisfied, Leo threw the phone onto the table as well. Shane, anticipating the move, caught it just before it hit the surface. "Why don't you just hit me instead? I'm tougher than a phone." Leo ignored him. His stomach had been churning since Chloe's call, and the sudden movement made it worse. "Move," he said, pushing Shane aside and running to the bathroom. He knelt before the toilet like a loyal subject before his king and started to vomit. The nausea was overwhelming. He felt completely drained, his body weak as he clung to the toilet bowl, tears streaming down his face. The room was spinning, and he felt a strong urge to just plunge his head into the toilet and end it all. "Drink some water." Shane had followed him in and was holding a glass of water in front of him. He had no strength left. He took the glass and slid to the floor, leaning against Shane's leg. He knew the bathroom must be a disgusting mess, and he didn't want Shane to see him like this. "Get out." Shane stepped back. Without his support, Leo's body gave out, and he collapsed onto the floor. "See? If I leave, you fall," Shane said, helping him sit up again. "Are you done?" Leo nodded, his eyes closed. The spinning was worse when he opened them. Shane wiped his face with a towel, then wrapped an arm around him and half-dragged him out of the bathroom. Leo felt like a corpse. He mumbled a protest, asking if he had to be dragged. "I ran 6 miles today. If I try to carry you, I'll definitely drop you," Shane said with a small laugh, pulling him into the bedroom. Once he was on the bed, Leo felt a little better, but the dizziness and nausea remained. Shane efficiently stripped off his shirt, then his pants. As he did, his hand brushed down Leo's stomach to his leg. "Not bad, Leo. You're in good shape." "Shameless," Leo slurred. The next morning, Leo woke up before his alarm, not from a full bladder, but from a pounding headache. He pressed his temples and slowly sat up, his body aching as if he'd been beaten. He was alone in the bed, and completely naked. He vaguely remembered Shane helping him undress the night before. The kid had been thorough. He hadn't even left him his underwear. He glanced around and saw that Shane and his pillow were gone. After sitting for a moment to clear his head, Leo, feeling like he had a 200-pound weight on his shoulders, grabbed a pair of boxers and stumbled into the living room. Shane was spread-eagled on the sofa, shirtless and fast asleep, one arm hanging down to the floor. Leo sat down at the table, debating whether to wake him and ask why he had stripped him naked. But his head hurt too much. He gently tapped his skull with his fingers and then noticed a glass of water and 2 white pills on the table. "Take them. They're painkillers." Shane's sleepy voice came from the sofa. "Why are you up so early?" "My head is killing me," Leo said. He hated taking medicine, but he swallowed the pills without hesitation. The headache had to go. He couldn't call in sick. He had too much work to do. Besides, he didn't want Patrick to think he was taking a mental health day because of what had happened. It was too embarrassing. "Don't ever drink like that again," Shane said, yawning. "You threw up like 7 or 8 times last night. I was tempted to just throw you outside." "You were gonna throw me out naked?" Leo asked with a weak smile. "I had to. You puked all over yourself, and I didn't know where you keep your underwear. You didn't get much sleep, did you?" "It was fine. But you kept complaining that your body hurt." "I checked, but I couldn't find any bruises," Shane said, getting up to stretch. "Your dick was still hard when I was cleaning you up, so I figured you were just drunk talking and went to sleep." "You didn't give me a hand?" Leo asked, heading to the bathroom. "Next time, I'll make sure you're fully satisfied," Shane called after him with a laugh. "You know, Leo, I always thought you were a pretty serious guy. Where did you get that idea?" Leo asked, splashing cold water on his face. "From the family. Grandma always used to say how mature you were, how responsible, how you were such a good older brother. It was always your brother this, your brother that." "And I'm not?" Leo asked, turning to face him. "You seem like it most of the time. But a little alcohol and you say whatever's on your mind," Shane said, squeezing past him to the sink. "What you said yesterday must have really hurt her feelings. Please. One day your girlfriend introduces you as her ex in front of her new boyfriend," Leo said with a bitter laugh, "and then you'll know what hurt feelings really means." Shane paused, surprised. He had guessed Leo had been dumped, but he hadn't imagined it would be in such a dramatic fashion. "Yeah, that's rough." "It's more than rough," Leo said, lighting a cigarette in the living room, only to hand it to Shane after one puff made him feel nauseous. "Like I said," Shane began, taking the cigarette and putting it out in the ashtray, "it wasn't your fault. It was hers. Torturing yourself over someone else's mistake is just stupid." Leo got dressed, telling him to mind his own business. He couldn't remember most of what he had said to Chloe, only that he had vented all his frustrations in a drunken rage. He did remember the phone battery in the soup. Shane had cleaned it for him. It wasn't until he was in his car that he turned his phone on. A cascade of text message notifications chimed, all from the same number. More than 20 of them. He opened the last one. It was just one sentence. "I'm coming to get my things tomorrow morning." He thought for a moment, then called Shane. He asked if he had class in the morning. When Shane said no, Leo told him to stay at the apartment. Someone was coming to pick up some things. He instructed Shane to get his spare key from her when she left and that he could use that set from now on. Shane agreed without asking any questions. Leo looked at the 20-plus unread messages, hesitated for a second, and then deleted them all. Chloe didn't have many things at Leo's apartment, just a few changes of clothes, some books, and a set of toiletries, but she was determined to get them back. As she used her key to open the door, she felt a strange mix of emotions. She had chosen a time when Leo would be at work, yet a part of her had hoped he would have taken the day off to wait for her. In her eyes, and in the eyes of others, Leo was an excellent man, mature yet occasionally boyish. But with her, he was always calm and gentle. She had decided that wasn't what she wanted. She craved a passionate, fiery love. But yesterday, Leo's words had cut her deeply, revealing a side of him she had never seen. He could be so sharp, so cruel. She took a breath and pushed the door open, only to freeze on the threshold. Someone was inside, and it wasn't Leo. And he was practically naked, wearing only a pair of boxers. "Can I help you?" Shane asked, sitting cross-legged on the sofa, polishing his hockey stick. "My name is Chloe," she answered reflexively, flustered by the bizarre opening line. She averted her gaze from his nearly naked body. "Who are you?" "The doorman," he replied, looking her up and down. So this is the woman who made Leo miserable all night, he thought. Nice body, average face. "I'm a friend of Leo's," Chloe said, feeling that a normal conversation with this person was impossible. "I have some things here I need to get. Be my guest," Shane said with a small smile, returning his attention to his hockey stick. Chloe hurried into Leo's bedroom. The man's mocking smile and hostile tone made her nervous, as did the hockey stick in his hands and the bandage on his head. He looked like a thug. How did Leo know someone like this? She quickly packed her clothes and books, her eyes scanning the familiar room. It suddenly struck her that aside from her own things, there was nothing in the apartment that suggested their relationship. Not even a single photo, though they had taken many together. In that moment, she realized she didn't know Leo at all. "I'm leaving," she said, walking past the man on the sofa. She decided to leave her toiletries behind. She was inexplicably afraid of him. "Wait," Shane said, getting up and walking toward her, stick in hand. Chloe quickly opened the door, ready to bolt. "What?" "The key," Shane said, pointing to the keys in her hand. "Give it to me." She threw the keys at him and practically ran to the elevator, glancing back nervously. Shane just smiled and slammed the door shut. He tossed the keys in his hand. They had a small pink pig keychain. He remembered Leo's had a blue one. They were a matching set. He threw them on the table and went back to polishing his stick. After a few minutes, he stood up, took a few practice swings, then leaned the stick against the wall and got dressed. He went into the bathroom, threw all of Chloe's things into a trash bag, and left the apartment. At a small kiosk in the market next door, he had a new set of all the keys made. On his way home, he casually tossed Chloe's keys into a public trash can. Leo spent the entire morning being stared at by Patrick. He knew Patrick was waiting for him to talk about what happened yesterday, but he had nothing to say. He wasn't one to dwell on things. No matter how he felt about Chloe, what happened, happened. He would turn the page. The pain was a separate issue. "Lunch?" Patrick asked, nudging him with his chair. Leo agreed. He was starting to feel hungry. During lunch, Patrick tried several times to bring it up but always stopped himself. "Just ask. It's fine. It's over," Leo finally said. "She didn't even try to explain?" Patrick asked, unable to comprehend why any woman would let a guy like Leo go so easily. "Why do you think like a woman? What's there to explain? It would just be the same old cliches. You're not the one for me. I say, I know." "End of story," Leo said, focusing on his food. So nonchalant. "Are you disappointed? You thought because we're friends, I'd drag you out for a drunken pity party, and now you feel left out?" Leo asked, giving him a sideways glance. "Of course. I had my shoulder all ready for you to cry on," Patrick joked. "All right, hurry up and eat," Leo said, lowering his voice. "We'll go to the bathroom later, lock the door." "What are you going to do?" Patrick dropped his chopsticks, covering his chest protectively. "Didn't you just ask me to have my way with you?" Leo said with a smirk. "You're on," Patrick shot back. "I bet you don't have the guts. I could have you crying in 5 minutes." But they never had their dramatic confrontation in the bathroom. While Patrick was inside, Leo was on the phone with his mother. "Is Shane doing okay with you? He's not having a hard time, is he?" she asked, as if Leo had a history of abusing his cousin. As far as he could remember, he had never bullied Shane, just avoided him. "How could I possibly give him a hard time?" Leo said, thinking of the vodka bottle Shane had smashed in the sink. With that kind of intensity, who would dare cross him? "Good. It's not easy for your aunt and uncle to send him to college. You need to look after him so they don't have to worry. Okay. Also, his birthday is on the 7th. Have him come over for dinner. I'll celebrate it for him. Leo did the math. The 7th was a Saturday, just a few days away. But he thought his mother's plan was a bad idea. He told her not to bother, that Shane would surely want to celebrate with his friends, and forcing him to have dinner with family would just be awkward. Really? You always celebrate your birthday at home. Leo held back a sigh. He had been miserable about that for years, only doing it to avoid disappointing them. He gently explained that Shane had probably already made plans with his friends and that it would be better to just buy him a gift. Fine. Then you can pay for his birthday celebration, his mother decided. He's a student. He doesn't have any money. You're his older brother. You should treat him. That should work, right? When Patrick came out of the bathroom, Leo slung an arm over his shoulder. Hey, what do you get a kid who's 18 or 19 for his birthday? A girl, Patrick answered without a moment's hesitation. Brilliant, Leo said, patting his shoulder. That had been his first thought too. That evening, he asked Shane directly, your birthday is on Saturday. What do you want? Shane, sweaty from practice, was taking off his clothes. He paused and looked at Leo. You know why your ex-girlfriend said it was boring with you? What? Leo was stunned. What does that have to do with anything? Whatever you want to give, just give it. Even if it's a head of cabbage, as long as you don't say anything, it's a surprise, Shane lectured, now in his underwear. When you ask days in advance, it kills the excitement. You get it? Are you lecturing me? Leo kicked Shane's discarded clothes aside. You're not a girl I'm trying to impress. But you didn't use this trick when you were trying to impress girls, did you? Shane said, heading into the bathroom. Try it on me. It'll work. Except for the occasional pang of anger, all traces of Chloe were slowly disappearing from Leo's life. He never asked Shane about her visit, and Shane never brought it up. Shane did, however, take his keys and return them with the old keychain replaced by a small hockey stick. He said it was a souvenir from a team tournament. Leo noticed Shane had a matching one and had to suppress a laugh. It was just like when they were kids. If Leo got a new toy, Goober would insist on having the same one. Some things never changed. But the small hockey stick did give him an idea for a gift. Shane had been playing hockey since high school and still used a wooden stick, which, Leo learned, broke easily. They had a tournament coming up in a couple of months, and although Leo doubted a freshman would get much playing time, he decided to buy him a new stick. After some research and a conversation where he pretended to be interested in hockey to find out Shane's position forward, he bought a carbon fiber stick that the salesgirl highly recommended. He left the expensive gift, which cost him half a month's salary, at his office. That would be a surprise. What the hell is this? Patrick asked, eyeing the long box. A stick, Leo said, frowning at his code. An IM notification popped up. A friend request from someone named Totally Nude. The message was just one word, Leo. It had to be Shane. He accepted the request. Are you taking up polo? Patrick asked disdainfully. Get lost. Since when do polo mallets look like this? Then what is it for? Hockey. It's for my cousin. Your cousin plays hockey? That's pretty high-end, Patrick remarked. Back in college, playing basketball was the ultimate way to pick up girls. Leo ignored him. An IM from Totally Nude appeared. Hey, busy? Leo typed back. Sort of. How did you get my username? I asked my aunt. Dude, do you have a Leo_personal account or something? Chatting with Leo_work is kind of intimidating. This is the only one. I use it for picking up girls too. You've got style. Hey, I wanted to ask you something. For my birthday, I'm taking my friends out to dinner. You should come. The guys from the team want to thank you in person for bailing them out. Sure. Have you decided on a place? Does it matter? We can just grab a spot at one of the dive bars outside campus. No, we'll go to a real restaurant. I'll book it. Don't worry about it. Consider it a birthday gift from me and your aunt. I couldn't possibly. Don't do that, Leo. Since when are you so modest? You're totally nude. For God's sake. Damn. It's settled. I'm working. Talk later. As he was about to close the window, Leo glanced at Shane's status message. The first half was surprisingly poetic for someone named Totally Nude, but the second half was pure Shane. Left hand for love, right hand for the other thing. Leo booked a private room at a sports bar near the university. As per his mother's instructions, he also arranged for a karaoke room for later. She was worried Shane would get homesick on his birthday and wanted to make sure he was well taken care of. Leo thought she was overthinking it. Shane didn't seem like the sentimental type. So, what did you get me? Shane asked cheerfully from the kitchen, where he was making dinner. I got you. Leo, who was watching TV, almost blurted out a hockey stick. A girl. Shane, holding a head of lettuce, froze. For real? For real? What do you think? Leo asked, turning to see a look of anguish on his cousin's face. Not great, Shane said, dejectedly returning to the kitchen. Sensing an opportunity, Leo followed him in and patted him on the behind. You have a girlfriend, don't you? No, Shane said, not looking up from his chopping. Doesn't seem right. A guy like you. Leo trailed off. What kind of guy? Good-looking, confident, plays a cool sport like hockey. Leo said, snagging a piece of lettuce. Girls love that type. Guys too, Shane said with a small smile. What? Nothing. Seriously, Leo, you didn't actually get me a girl, did you? In your dreams, Leo laughed, walking out of the kitchen. If there was a girl, I'd keep her for myself. On Saturday, the restaurant was packed. They arrived at 5 for their 6 o'clock reservation to order food in advance. Shane leaned over the table as Leo ordered, telling him not to get anything too fancy, as his friends were all bottomless pits. Leo just waved him off. He knew what teenage boys' appetites were like. Anything to drink? The waitress asked. No, we're good, Shane answered before Leo could speak. After she left, Leo looked at him quizzically. No drinks? Of course we're drinking, Shane grinned, leaning in conspiratorially. But the drinks here are a ripoff. The guys will bring some when they get here. If I get too drunk tonight, you'll have to carry me home. Leo sighed. The restaurant didn't allow outside beverages. You're such a spendthrift, Shane said as his phone rang. He looked at it, and his happy expression immediately soured. Leo, I'll be right back. I have to take this. Shane's phone call dragged on. He stood by a window in the hallway for over 20 minutes, his brow furrowed in frustration. Leo checked on him several times. It reminded him of the 2-hour call from the other night. He started to worry that Shane was in some kind of trouble. By the time his friends arrived at 6 with a large cake, Shane finally hung up and rushed back to the private room. Leo was surprised to see that not a single girl was among them, just a rowdy group of young men. The room was so loud the waitress flinched every time she entered. The guys he had bailed out of the precinct all came over to pour Leo a drink and thank him for his help. All right, Leo said, downing the glass. He pointed to Shane, who was grinning across the table. The birthday boy is over there, waiting for your worship. That's right, Shane said, leaning back in his chair. Come kneel before your king. A few of the guys immediately tackled him, forcing him to drink. After 3 glasses, Leo noticed that a bottle of liquor, smuggled in under someone's jacket, was already empty before anyone had even touched the food. Hey, eat something, Leo said, tapping his glass on the table. Leo, Shane said, his face unchanged by the alcohol. Where's my present? Hold on, Leo said, standing up. He had almost forgotten. He had left the stick at the front desk. I'll go get the girl for you. He heard a chorus of whoops and hollers as he closed the door. When he returned with the gift, the chaos was still in full swing. Shane had one arm slung around a friend's shoulder, laughing. Drink as much as you want. I'll keep up. Just don't come crying to me when you can't walk home. Whoa, Someone shouted as Leo entered with the long box. Nice stick. Shane pushed his friend away and turned. He saw the box in Leo's hands and froze, speechless with surprise. Happy birthday, Leo said, tossing the stick to him and sitting back down. Shane's reaction was more than he had expected. It's good to have a brother, one of the guys said, clapping Shane on the shoulder. Shane finally snapped out of his daze. He placed the stick on the table, lunged at Leo, and gave him a hard kiss on the cheek. Leo, thank you. Get off, Leo said, pushing him away and wiping his face. You got spit all over me. Shane just laughed, picking up the stick and admiring it. I can't believe it, Leo. I really can't believe it. You like it? Yeah. Is it a surprise? I'm so surprised I could offer you my body in return. Want to? Get lost. Leo didn't know how he made it through the rest of the dinner. The boys were incredibly loud and energetic. He was just glad to see that Shane seemed to have a good group of friends. He went out to pay the bill and returned to announce that he had booked a karaoke room nearby. You're the man, Leo. The group cheered, getting ready to leave. Leo, Shane said, draping an arm over his shoulder, how much did you spend tonight? This is too much. Don't worry about it. It's not like I'm hiring prostitutes for you, Leo said, feeling a bit dizzy from the alcohol. Hiring prostitutes for me would be a waste of money. Shane laughed. Just then, his phone rang again. He ignored it, trying to pull Leo toward the door. Later, I'll sing a song for you, totally nude. Shane's phone had been ringing and buzzing with texts all night, but he had ignored everyone. Now, in the relatively quiet room, the ringing was impossible to ignore. Under Leo's stare, Shane finally pulled out his phone, his brow furrowed as he answered. What the hell do you want? He snapped. Leo could hear a man's voice shouting on the other end. Before the man could finish, Shane was shouting back. Are you insane? He kicked a chair. If you have the balls, then jump. I'll come collect your damn corpse. He hung up, grabbed his new hockey stick, and stormed out. Leo followed, silent. This wasn't the right time to ask questions. At the entrance of the restaurant, Shane stopped and turned to him. Leo, can I borrow your car? His friends had already left for the karaoke bar. For Shane, the birthday boy, to suddenly leave was unexpected. What's going on? Leo asked. Shane's face was unreadable. I have to go to Miller Bridge. Why?
Léo lit à cigarette.
Miller Bridge was a half-hour drive from here. Whose call was that? What's going on? Someone's threatening to jump. Can I explain later? What? Leo yelled, his voice louder than he intended due to the alcohol. What kind of trouble are you in? Just let me borrow the car. I have to go check on him, Shane said, patting Leo's pockets for the keys. Stop that, Leo said, pushing him away. You can't drive. You don't even have a license. No. Unlicensed, and you've been drinking. What are you thinking? Shane looked around frantically. There were no taxis in sight. You have a license, right? You drive. Please, Leo. I don't know what this idiot is capable of. Leo stared at Shane for a long moment, then cursed. Damn it. Why do I always get dragged into your messes? Leo, the law-abiding citizen, was now driving drunk. He glanced at Shane, who was sitting silently beside him, clutching his hockey stick. This is the guy who called you for 2 hours the other night, isn't it? Yeah. You're going to explain everything later. Okay. Miller Bridge was deserted at night. As they drove onto it, Leo saw a figure sitting on the railing. What the hell is this? He muttered, stopping the car a few feet away. Stay in the car, Shane said, jumping out. And turn off the headlights. Leo switched off the lights and watched from the car. The person on the railing was a young man, about Shane's age, thin and with delicate features. The whole scene, a man perched on a railing, waiting for another man, felt incredibly strange. So you came, the young man said, swinging his legs. You're insane, Shane said, stopping a few feet away. What do you want? Why are you ignoring me? Do I need a reason? Shane was getting angry. He had been worried, but now he saw that this was just a performance. He felt like he'd been played. You were worried about me. Otherwise, you wouldn't have rushed over, the young man said with a smile. Feeling pretty good about yourself? Shane glanced back at Leo, who was leaning against the car door, smoking, looking like he was watching a movie. Listen to me, Caden. This is the last time I'm playing this stupid game. I don't care if you jump or not. Next time you feel like it, don't bother calling me. I'm not interested in being a spectator. Do you have to talk to me like that? Caden's voice cracked. What did I ever do to you? Just leave me alone. That's all I ask, Shane said, turning to walk back to the car. I can't handle this. Shane, Caden yelled, swinging one leg over the outside of the railing. Stop right there. Leo's heart leaped into his throat. The alcohol vanished from his system. He opened his car door, ready to intervene. The bridge wasn't that high, but the current below was strong. What do you want? Shane roared, his patience at its limit. Just be nicer to me, Caden pleaded. Stay out of this, Shane snapped at Leo without turning around. You broke up with me for him, didn't you? Caden said, looking at Leo. Leo froze. He thought he must be mishearing things. Two men breaking up, threatening to jump off a bridge? Broke up? When the hell were we ever together? Shane sputtered. We slept together. Doesn't that count? The cigarette fell from Leo's mouth. He stared at Shane's back, his mind struggling to process what he was hearing. When did we ever sleep together? Shane asked, almost laughing in disbelief. A handjob still counts. Caden swung his other leg over the railing, looking at Shane defiantly. Plenty of guys have given me handjobs. I've even felt up my brother. If that counts, I must have a whole harem, Shane yelled, forgetting Leo was standing right behind him. Come on, Caden. Be reasonable. You're about to die, for Christ's sake. Counts to me, Caden shot back. You're still wearing the underwear I bought you. If we're not together, why would you wear them? Because you threw out all my other pairs, you lunatic. You want them? Fine. Shane started unbuttoning his jeans. Here, you can have them back. What are you doing? Leo grabbed his arm. Are you two having a contest to see who can be more insane? Stay out of it, Leo. This ends tonight, Shane said, shrugging off his jeans. He then pulled off his boxers and threw them at Caden. What else do you want? You're ruthless, Shane, Caden said, stunned. Today you're gonna watch me, no need, Shane interrupted. Consider my debt repaid. Before Leo could react, Shane ran to the railing and vaulted over it, plunging into the water below. Caden and Leo were both frozen in shock. It was only when they heard the loud splash that Leo snapped out of it and ran to the railing. Shane. A head popped up from the water. I'm not dead. You're sick. Leo yelled, all his pent-up frustration finally exploding. Why didn't you just break your neck? Don't you dare come back up here, or I'll kill you myself. Yelling won't work, Caden said quietly from beside him. He only responds to kindness. Leo had forgotten he was even there. Hearing his voice, he remembered who had started this whole mess. Get down from there, he said, his voice dangerously low. It's fine. I wasn't going to jump. I just didn't think he would. What did you say? Leo felt a throbbing in his temples. I said, get the hell down there. Before Caden could finish, Leo slapped him hard on the back, shoving him off the railing and into the river. After pushing Caden in, Leo's anger subsided, replaced by a flicker of fear. What if the kid drowned? He leaned over the railing, ready to jump in if necessary. But then he saw Caden sputtering and swimming toward the shore. He could swim. He could swim, and he was threatening to jump off a bridge? Leo felt a renewed surge of anger. He should have tied a rock to his leg first. He got back in the car and slammed the door. A few minutes later, the two dripping figures climbed up from under the bridge. Caden was silent. Shane picked up his jeans from the ground. As he was about to put them on, Leo, wanting to check for injuries, instinctively turned on the headlights. The bright beams illuminated Shane's bare ass. "Shit, turn them off," Shane yelled. Leo switched off the lights, a strange urge to laugh bubbling up inside him. "Get in. I'll take you back to campus," Shane said, pulling on his wet jeans and getting into the passenger seat. He glanced at Caden. "Wring out your clothes. Don't get water everywhere." Caden took off his t-shirt and wrung it out, then gave Shane a defiant look and reached for his belt. "Just get in the car," Leo said quickly. "Don't take anything else off." On the way, Shane got a call from the karaoke bar. They had been singing for an hour and had just realized the birthday boy was missing. Shane glanced at Leo and said, "You guys go on without me. My brother's drunk. I'm taking care of him." When they got to the university, Caden got out of the car, then turned back. "He's your brother? Who he is has nothing to do with you," Shane snapped. "And don't ever call me with this kind of drama again. We're done. Next time you feel like jumping off a bridge, just do it." Caden just smiled and walked onto campus. Leo didn't start the car. He stared straight ahead, knowing he should say something but unable to find the words. "We should go back to the party," Shane said, wringing out his wet clothes out the window. "When did you feel me up?" Leo asked, remembering the line that had made him drop his cigarette. "When Grandma died, you came back for a few days, remember?" "It was then," Shane said. "And the other night when you were drunk and I was taking your clothes off. You called me a pervert." Leo rested his forehead against the steering wheel. This was not the conversation he wanted to be having. After a long silence, he finally got to the point. "Do you really like men?" "Yeah," Shane said simply. He hadn't wanted Leo to know, but after tonight, there was no hiding it. "Oh," Leo said, starting the car. He didn't know what else to say. He finally added, "That Caden kid. He's a year older than me. When I first got here, the dorms were full, so I had to stay in his room for a while," Shane explained. "Nothing really happened between us. One night we were drinking and he came onto my bed and..." Leo choked on a cloud of smoke. "I was kind of out of it, so I didn't stop him," Shane continued after Leo's coughing fit subsided. "Then I fell asleep. That was it. But he wouldn't let it go. He kept insisting we were together. Can you believe how unlucky I am? You want me to say you're the victim here?" Leo asked, flicking his cigarette but out the window. "Do my aunt and uncle know about this? About Caden? About you liking men? I don't know. If they did, they'd probably kill me," Shane said with a humorless laugh. "Look, it's your private life." "It's none of my business," Leo said, frowning. "But you need to be smart about it. Don't let this kind of thing happen again. This whole night was a disaster." "I know," Shane said quietly. "Thanks, Leo." Leo wanted to say "you're welcome," but it didn't feel right. He wanted to say "that's what brothers are for," but that felt even more wrong. In the end, he said nothing. When they walked into the karaoke room, it was a cacophony of terrible singing. The group fell silent when they saw Leo, rushing over to ask if he was okay. They barely glanced at the shirtless, dripping Shane. Most of them had already shed their own shirts. Leo collapsed onto a sofa. The pounding music was giving him a headache. "Leo," Shane's voice was a warm puff of air, smelling faintly of alcohol against his neck. He had to shout over the music, "Listen to me sing later." The sensation made Leo flinch. He pushed Shane away and sat up straight. He immediately regretted it. His reaction had been too strong. It was his brother, after all. Shane seemed to freeze for a moment, then quickly pulled his hand back and went to the other side of the sofa to pick a song. Leo took a sip of his Coke, watching Shane's back. He felt a pang of guilt. "What do you want to sing?" "I'll pick it for you," Shane asked, sitting down next to him again, but leaving a small space between them this time. "I don't sing. If I did, you'd all be on your knees, begging me to stop," Leo said, leaning back and patting Shane's back. "You sing. Are you going to sing Totally Nude for me?" "Yeah," Shane grinned. "It's appropriate, since I'm not wearing much right now." From the other side of the sofa, someone drawled, "No way. Last time you sang it in your underwear." You're wearing way too much now. Leo glanced at Shane. I'm empty inside today, Shane said, patting his pants with a smile. Impossible, the guy said, standing up. I'll check. Go ahead, Shane said, pulling at the waistband of his jeans, looking completely unbothered. That was all the encouragement they needed. Several of them jumped up and lunged for Shane, sticking their hands down his pants. Leo quickly moved aside. By his rough count, at least 4 different hands went down Shane's pants, a couple lingering for more than 3 seconds. Damn, he's really not wearing any, someone shouted. Aren't you afraid of getting chafed? Shane just leaned back and laughed. When the music for his song started, Shane picked up the microphone. From a corner, someone commented, Shane's pretty big. You should have felt him up a bit more, Shane said into the mic with a grin. It's even bigger when it's hard. The comment, broadcast through the speakers, made Leo laugh. You have no shame. It's true, Shane said, turning to him with a serious expression. Big. It has to be big, Leo said, raising his glass to him with a smile. Now sing. As Shane began to sing, Leo found himself in a daze. His voice was good, slightly husky, and it made the alcohol he'd drunk earlier feel like it was surging back to life. Listening to the sad song in his slightly drunk state, he inevitably thought of Chloe. The feeling of humiliation washed over him again, and he felt a suffocating tightness in his chest. He stood up and left the room. The hallway was empty except for a couple of waiters. He walked into the men's room and leaned over the sink, trying to vomit, but nothing came up. He splashed some water on his face. He heard the door open behind him and saw Shane's worried face in the mirror. You finished? Leo asked, turning around. No, I was singing for you. When you left, I stopped, Shane said with a smile, handing him a pack of tissues. Are you okay? You didn't drink that much. I'm fine, Leo said. I didn't know you could sing. Of course. I'm a man of many talents, Shane grinned. Did it bring up bad memories? Leo shot him a look. Really? You're gonna poke the bear like that? It wasn't on purpose. I liked the song, and I wanted to sing it for you. It wasn't until you walked out that I remembered you just got dumped, Shane said. He started to put an arm around Leo's shoulder, then hesitated and let it drop. You should sing one. I'm not afraid to kneel before you. Shane had put his shirt back on, but it was still damp and clung to his muscular back. As Leo followed him out of the bathroom, he felt a strange sense of wonder. The dirty, snot-nosed kid who used to follow him around like a shadow had grown into this tall, handsome young man. But he was gay. If the family found out, all hell would break loose. They partied for another hour. By the time Leo called it a night, it was almost midnight. As they were leaving, one of the guys begged him to sing a song. Leo protested that the only song he could sing without going completely off-key was Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, but they wouldn't let him leave. He saw Shane eagerly searching for the song on the karaoke machine and sighed. Fine. He would sing. It wasn't his eardrums that would be bleeding. When the music started, he took the microphone. Twinkle, twinkle, little star, he bellowed, closing his eyes. The room fell silent. Shane burst out laughing. Is that the same song I remember from when I was a kid? That was the closest you've ever been to the right key. Yeah. Any other song, and you wouldn't even recognize it, Leo said with a smile. How I wonder what you are. Up above the world so high, Shane joined in, his voice pulling Leo's back toward the correct melody. They sang the rest of the song together, a duet of one person running from the key and the other dragging him back. By the end, everyone was in stitches, telling Leo he was a legend. On the taxi ride home, Leo felt sick. He couldn't handle mixed drinks, and the car's air freshener was making it worse. As soon as they got home, he ran to the bathroom and threw up again. When he came out, Shane was on the sofa, admiring his new hockey stick. Leo sat down beside him. Damn, I get drunk so easily these days. That's what happens when you're in a bad mood, Shane said. You should go to sleep. Leo went into the bathroom, took a quick shower, and came out feeling much better. Shane was still on the sofa. "Go wash up," Leo said, kicking his leg. "I should have thrown a bar of soap in the river with you." "Leo," Shane said with a grin, "thanks." "For what?" Leo went into his bedroom and collapsed onto the bed, burying his face in his pillow. "The stick is awesome." Shane's head wound still stung when it got wet. He winced as he took off the bandage and dabbed at it with alcohol. He walked quietly into the bedroom, thinking Leo was asleep. The moonlight cast a sliver of light across Leo's bare back. He stared for a moment, then looked away. He knew it was his brother, and his brother knew his secret. He bent down to turn Leo onto his side so he would be more comfortable, then started to leave. "Where are you going?" Leo's voice, clear and awake, came from the bed. "You're not asleep?" "No," Leo said. "What are you doing? Aren't you going to bed?" "I'll sleep on the sofa," Shane said. Leo turned on the bedside lamp. "It's hot in the living room. There's no AC. It's fine. Why are you being so difficult?" Leo said, propping his head on his arm. He knew what Shane was thinking. "I didn't say anything when you felt me up. Don't get all shy on me now. Just get in bed. I have to work tomorrow." "Damn," Shane said, closing the door and getting into bed. "I might snore. I've been drinking. I'll be asleep." "I won't hear it," Leo said, turning to face the wall. He didn't want Shane to feel like there was a distance between them now. He was still his brother. "Leo," Shane said after a moment, "I remember you weren't like this when we were kids." "Like what?" Leo asked, his eyes closed. "I was a little scared of you. You seemed to have a short temper, especially with me." "Did I?" "Yeah." "Why don't you remember anything from when we were kids?" "I've always had a good temper. Grandma used to say I was as gentle as a rabbit," Leo said, thinking back. He had to admit he probably hadn't been very nice to Goober. He sighed. "If I was, you probably deserved it. You were an annoying kid. You followed me everywhere. I couldn't get rid of you. Still, I was scared of you," Shane said, his eyes wide open in the dark. Unlike Leo, he remembered everything about their childhood, especially the parts that involved his older brother.